ever find yourself just going along with the crowd, and then later you're like, why did I do that? Or maybe you've been on a team and suddenly felt this surge of confidence, like you could take on anything. It's a weird feeling, right?
Well, if you've ever felt that pull, you're definitely not alone. It's not just you. This stuff is, well, it's hardwired into our brains. See, for most of human history, our survival literally depended on sticking with our tribe, no questions asked. But here's the kicker. In our modern world, that same ancient instinct can lead to some really strange and sometimes pretty dangerous outcomes.
All right, let's dive in, and we're going to start at the deep end, the really extreme stuff. Why is it that seemingly normal, everyday people can sometimes do shocking things when they get lost in a massive crowd? Well, the answer is a really powerful psychological state.
So there's a fancy psychological term for this, deindividuation. But really, all it means is you kind of lose yourself. When you're just a face in a huge crowd, you feel anonymous. That feeling of personal responsibility just seems to melt away. And all of a sudden, the normal rules, they don't feel like they apply anymore. It helps explain some of the wild, even aggressive behavior we see in things like riots or out-of-control protests.
And if you want a really chilling example of this, look no further than the infamous Stanford prison experiment. You had these ordinary college students, right? They were randomly made prisoners or guards. And with their own identities hidden behind uniforms and these new roles, the guards became abusive so quickly that the whole 2-week experiment had to be shut down in just 6 days. It's a pretty stark reminder of how fast we can ditch our own moral compass when we feel like just part of a group.
Okay, so that's the big anonymous crowd effect. But this stuff doesn't just happen in riots. It shows up in a much more common way. That simple, powerful pressure to just fit in.
Picture this. It's the 1950s, and a psychologist named Solomon Asch has a simple test. He shows people a line and asks them to pick the one that matches it from a group of 3. And I mean, the answer is super obvious. A kid could get it right, no problem.
But here's where it gets weird. The person being tested was actually in a room full of actors, and all the actors were told to confidently give the same, obviously wrong answer. So imagine you're sitting there. You know the right answer. You can see it with your own eyes. But one by one, every single other person picks the wrong line. So what do? Do you trust yourself, or do you just go with the group?
The results? They were absolutely staggering. A whopping 76% of people caved and went with the group's completely wrong answer at least once. This is something called normative social influence. It's that powerful, deep-seated desire we have to be liked and not look like an idiot. It's so strong, it can literally make us deny what we're seeing with our own eyes.
So we've covered massive crowds and peer pressure. Now let's zoom in a little closer to the groups you're probably in every day. At work, at school. It turns out when it comes to group influence here, things can go in 2 totally different directions.
On one hand, you've got social loafing. We've all seen this, right? It's that one person in the group project who just kicks back, figuring their individual effort won't really be noticed anyway. But then, on the flip side, you have social facilitation. That's when having people watch you actually makes you perform better, like an athlete who just kills it in front of a huge crowd. But, and this is a huge but, it only really works for simple stuff or things you've practiced a million times. If the task is new or complex, having an audience can actually make you totally choke.
And, this is not some newfangled idea. This was first spotted over 100 years ago in a super simple experiment with a tug-of-war rope. This guy, Max Ringelmann, he found that the more people he added to the team, the less hard each individual person pulled. It's that same old diffusion of responsibility. That classic, someone else will pick up the slack feeling.
Now we get to the really dangerous stuff. Why do groups of smart, well-meaning people sometimes come together and make catastrophically bad decisions? This is where we get into the dark side, groupthink and group polarization.
Think of groupthink as a state where keeping the peace becomes more important than being right. The need for everyone to just agree gets so strong that people stop thinking critically, they ignore major warning signs, and they start to feel like they're invincible. Anyone who disagrees is quietly shut down, and the whole group barrels toward a terrible decision that, honestly, no single person would have made on their own.
And this isn't just some textbook theory. The real-world consequences can be absolutely catastrophic. Groupthink has been blamed for some huge historical disasters, from the intelligence failures that led up to the attack on Pearl Harbor, all the way to the tragic decision to launch the Space Shuttle Challenger, even though engineers were screaming about safety concerns. In both cases, the pressure to agree silenced the voices that needed to be heard most.
So, if groupthink is bad, let's talk about its turbocharged cousin, group polarization. And honestly, to see it in action, just open up your social media feed. Welcome to the world's biggest echo chamber.
Here's how it works, and it's deceptively simple. You start with a group of people who already kind of agree on something. They get together and talk, but they only hear arguments that confirm what they already believe. And the result? The group's collective opinion doesn't just get stronger, it gets more extreme. People might even adopt a harder line stance just to show they're a good member of the group. This is how perfectly moderate views can spiral into radical ones.
So at this point, you might be thinking, wow, our brains are just wired to fail in groups. And yeah, it can feel a little hopeless, right? But here's the good news. Now that we understand the trap, we can actually learn how to get out of it. So let's talk about how to hack your own group brain.
First, it helps to look under the hood at what's happening chemically. Our brains are literally designed to reward us for sticking with our tribe. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detector, it lights up when you see outsiders. When your group does well, you get a nice hit of dopamine, that reward chemical. And oxytocin, the trust hormone, makes the bond with your own people even stronger. So we're basically fighting our own biology here.
So how do we fight this? We have to be intentional. We have to build in some safeguards. First, actively seek out different viewpoints. Bring outsiders in. It's the best way to shatter groupthink. Second, make it someone's official job to be the devil's advocate, to argue against the popular opinion. And finally, you have to practice a little intellectual humility. Remind yourself that, yeah, the need to belong is a powerful thing, but letting a group do your thinking for you, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
And that's really what I want to leave you with. Take a second and really think about it. Is it your family, your friends, your team at work, maybe an online community? Which group has the biggest influence on how you think and what you do? Because understanding